first.
Rotoworld headlines. Let's jump into it. And the first one is Kyle Pitts, a name we've talked about consistently. He returns to practice from his hamstring injury. He's now expected to play Sunday. Are you just starting Kyle Pitts across the board?
I'm not. I mean, first off, I need a new T-shirt that says "Make Kyle Pitts Great." I would say again,
time.
but he hadn't been great, right? I mean, like we're still waiting, Arthur Smith. We're still waiting. Jay, for the season, Kyle Pitts is tight end 23. Right? He's had one game this entire season where he's had more than 2 receptions and more than 25 receiving yards. Last week was his best game of the year, and I'll tell you why. I mean, he got a 0. It was his 4th game with single-digit fantasy points out of 5 this year. But the exciting thing about last week was he was ruled out before the game.
I know.
So you knew to bench him before the game as opposed to every other week when you find out on Monday, oh, I should have benched him.
Yes, America's nightmare was briefly put on pause for 1 week. I still think you have to start him. Like, he still is a guy who had 23-point games back-to-back last year. The talent hasn't gone anywhere. And the big thing is the Falcons, they've, like we talked about yesterday, they've covered all 5 of their games. They're the only team in the league that has done that. And eventually they're going to get into a game script where they have to throw the ball. And this Niners defense is scary, but Emmanuel Mosley's done for the year. Nick Bosa is in some doubt. You might be able to throw a little bit on the Niners, and they might be in a position where they have to throw. And also, it's still Kyle Pitts.
Right, I mean, they may have throw, like whatever. Hey, Kyle Pitts, can you block? We're going to scheme Kadarius Hodge open. Zacchaeus, we're going to try to get him deep for 1 or 2, run Drake London on some decoys. The fact is, Jay, is that, yes, the Niners defense is a little bit banged up here. And you're probably right. You probably have to start Kyle Pitts because you likely don't have a better option than him. I will say he came in at 10 in my initial ranks, which is for a guy that was drafted in the 3rd round and the 3rd overall tight end in every fantasy league. That's really low. It's the lowest I've ranked him all year. 49ers have allowed the 2nd fewest receiving yards to opposing tight ends. They've given up the 3rd fewest fantasy points to opposing tight ends. No tight end has scored a touchdown yet against the Niners. So even if they're a little bit banged up, it's still, this is not a good matchup for Kyle Pitts. Lower expectations. He is now in the, you're hoping for a touchdown tight end, range, which is fine. A lot of tight ends are in that, like, you hope for a touchdown, but not that you had to spend a 3rd-round pick on.
Okay, let's move on to Tyrion Davis-Price, who's had the ankle injury. He got in a full practice on Wednesday. Any concern about Jeff Wilson's workload? If TDP is able to go, they elevate Tevin Coleman to the active roster as well.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Coleman is more the concern here. But Jeff Wilson Jr. has done nothing to say, hey, we should get somebody else in there. Maybe, honestly, Deebo Samuel didn't have a ton of carries, so maybe that hurts his game a little bit. And so, listen, they killed Carolina last week. So I don't know how much you can take away from that. What I can tell you is that over the last 3 games, Jeff Wilson Jr. has averaged 75% of the Niners running back touches. He's had over 100 yards from scrimmage in 3 of the last 4. He's averaging almost 18 touches a game since Elijah Mitchell went down in week 1. So week 2 on, you're talking about 18 touches a game, basically, is what Wilson's. So, no, I'm not worried about TDP, stealing touches from Wilson. Again, this might be more of a, take a touch or 2 away from Deebo Samuel in the backfield or Tevin Coleman.
Like I said, Niners 5.5-point favorites, and Kyle Shanahan is the type of coach where he does not want to put a lead in Jimmy Garoppolo's hands. They just run the ball. They run the ball repeatedly when they're playing like a lead, like we think they will be. Now, James Conner, who's got the rib injury, he's considered day-to-day. So what do you make?
We're all day-to-day.
Yeah, everyone.
The old Dan Patrick line,
yes.
yeah.
We're all day-to-day.
We're all day-to-day.
What do you make of Eno Benjamin with a chance to lead this Cardinals backfield?
I think he's an interesting flyer. Like, I picked him up in a couple of leagues where there wasn't, like, an obvious, pickup, like, Kenneth Walker's roster and everything like that. So I grabbed Eno Benjamin because let's see, right? What I think is interesting here is that the Cardinals signed both Corey Clement and Tyson Williams to their practice squad. And, that's a lot of running back depth if all your guys are healthy. What that tells me is that Darrell Williams definitely doesn't look that great. And James Conner, the news came out, yes, that he's day-to-day, but does that mean he starts? Does it mean he gets a full workload? Eno Benjamin's had at least 45 yards from scrimmage and 4 targets in 4 out of the 5 games this year. I expect him to get at least that, if not a bigger workload against the Seahawks defense that has allowed over 100 yards to scrimmage 100 yards from scrimmage to every running back they've faced this year. Every single running back they've faced this year, in every game, let me rephrase that. In every game they've played, at least one running back has had over 100 yards from scrimmage, and so it's a really good matchup against Seattle. I do think Eno Benjamin might be flex-worthy, even if Connor is active, and there's a chance that Connor misses this game as well, especially given his injury as well. By the way, watch the timing on this game. It's a weird one because if the Mariners, if the Seattle Mariners force a game 4, this game will be moved back to 5 o'clock. And so, hopefully we get some news reports, midnight, early Sunday morning that says, yes, Connor's good to go or he's going to be ruled out. But just understand that as you start thinking about that game, whether you're going to start Benjamin or if you have Connor or if you have both, that there's a chance you might be looking at a 5 o'clock start time Eastern time.
Yeah, let's hope Framber Valdez gets it done on the mound for the Astros. We don't have to deal with this Mariners situation. I think the Seahawks, they give up the most rushing yards in the league. Weirdly, Seattle, which would not have been predictable preseason, they've become the best fantasy team in the league both ways because they just give up so many yards, and Geno's been so good, and we'll get to him. But
hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and Rotoworld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from Rotoworld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.